Hey guys, Pyker here, and welcome to another episode of Kethane Space Program. Today's goal, I think, is pretty much to put a space station around Kerbin, basically to dock any ships that we get into orbit that run out of fuel, or to save any astronauts that might, be otherwise screwed if we didn't have a space station. So today's goal is to put a space station around Kerbin. It's a very minimal space station. It just has extra fuel tanks. It probably holds about equivalent to one of those big orange tanks, maybe roughly, like half of one of those, maybe, or a little more. And it's got two outer docking ports for regular space shuttles, like the three-man command pod, or any kind of a command pod that holds a regular sized docking port, and a big senior docking port in the center, so we could fly up refuelers and just have a big docking station right in the middle to dock any kind of big tankers or big spacecraft to the center of the space station. So we're sending up a new recruit too as well with the space station, because I don't want to take any of our A team, which would be Bill, Bob, and Jebediah up there. And I think that Bill, Bob, and Jebediah will probably be the first miners on the surface of the moon, or at least one of the expeditions to the moon once we start getting there. But for this episode, we're getting the space station around Kerbin, and then we're going to get it into a nice orbit, probably roughly in like 120 kilometers above the surface. Mainly because I want it kind of close to the surface of Kerbin, mainly because it'll be easier to get to, easier to rendezvous to, but I also don't want it too close, because in case we launch at a bad time, we could still go within inside the orbit and catch up to it quicker than we would if it was, say, at 100 kilometers above the surface instead of like 150 or 120. I'm still debating on whether I want to put it at 120 or 150, or maybe I mean, I can even split the difference, do it 125, but whatever. So that is the aim of this episode. Pretty much that's about it. So I guess I will. I want you guys to see the build go on. So whenever you do decide to build your own space stations, or build your own spacecraft, or whatever, what have you, you'll have a general idea of how I did it. With this space station in particular, I made it so there's a docking port. I don't know why I like doing this though, but there's a senior docking port underneath the space station, and as you can see right now, I'm building the piece underneath it that also has a docking port instead of a separatron or a decoupler. And basically, the only reason I like doing that is because I can use that as a tug to take the space station to whatever altitude I want it at, and then I can decouple that piece, and it's got a brain on it, so and batteries and parachutes, so I can bring that piece back down to Kerbin without leaving space junk, basically. Because I mean, you don't need an engine on a space station. The whole point of the space station is just for it to float around in orbit. So there's really no reason to have an engine on it. If we need to, we can take up just a tug to it and dock it to the thing and deorbit it that way if we need to. So that's pretty much the only reason why I like doing it that way. And another thing with this build itself, I have the two orange tanks on the outside, and I don't know if you guys can see it, but those little yellow lines going to the center tank, that's basically transferring fuel to all the other engines, and then I'm going to put two more engines on the other sides that are going to fuel into the outside orange tanks. So basically, as the fuel burns, it fills the other tanks. So whenever you separate the first to separate tanks are empty, it still helped fuel the other tanks, so the other tanks are still full when you separate the empty tanks. So in other words, you have more thrust for the amount of you're using more engines on one tank of fuel than you would be if you didn't have those little yellow fuel lines. So instead of burning two engines with two orange tanks, you're burning four engines with two orange tanks, and it keeps filling everything up. So you have the longest burn with the most amount of thrust. Yeah, I guess that makes sense. So the longest burn with the most amount of thrust. So that's pretty much why I do it that way, and it seems to be the best way to do these rocket builds, especially with big, heavy space stations. It seems to be the best way to get them into orbit. So I will see you guys on the launch pad. Alright guys, we're on the launch pad and we're gonna get this puppy into orbit. Hopefully anyways, and as we're launching I will try to explain the orange tank thing. I don't know if I explained that well enough. Uh, I think I did, but I don't know. I'll be able to just demonstrate it as it's going a lot easier than just talking about it. So we're gonna turn on our SAS and we're gonna throttle up about 1/3 of the way, a little bit over 1/3 of the way, because those solid rocket boosters, those things freaking rule. Yeah, so we're gonna go ahead and launch this puppy in 3, 2, 1, go. The only other thing that I didn't do with this rocket, which I probably should have, was put like winglets on it so I can steer it while it's still in the atmosphere, because while it's not in the atmosphere, it's actually pretty difficult to maneuver. Once we get out of the first layer of the atmosphere, though, it becomes a little bit easier to control this thing. But it's not terrible. And about 10 kilometers to 12 kilometers up, you start getting out of the first layer of the atmosphere, and that's pretty much when you need to start turning over anyways. So it works out all right. So yeah, and who's our new recruit here? Jorbal's Kerbin, which is probably the greatest name I've ever seen in my entire life. I think it's Jorbal's. That's great. Let's just deconnect these, throttle up just a touch, because we have 4 main sail thrusters, which do the job quite well. Alright, so now I'm going to try to explain the fuel tank system here again. So as all 4 of those engines are burning, these 2 are running out of fuel quicker than these 2, because the 2 that I'm disconnecting now were filling the other 2. And now I activated the center engine, so now I have 3 completely full fuel tanks, mainly because of the fuel lines that I have. And now whenever I do disconnect these outer 2 orange tanks, this center tank will be full as well, because as all 3 engines are burning, the fuel is being pumped into the center to keep the center rocket full as we burn fuel. So it seems like you run out of fuel a lot quicker, but you get more thrust for the amount of weight that you have. And I don't know, it seems to work pretty damn well. So that's pretty much the system that I've been doing for a while now. Also, we're going to tip over to about 10 degrees on the 90-degree mark on our nav ball here and start our gravity turn. And I have to be extremely careful whenever I tip this thing over, because the docking ports are not nearly as strong as a regular decoupler, so they like to move and shake a bunch, and if you tip over too quickly or too aggressively, it'll just break in half. So you gotta watch that stuff. We're also burning a lot of fuel and gaining a lot of speed, so we're wasting fuel right now. So we're gonna throttle down and let this guy burn a little bit more efficiently, I guess. So we need to get about 2.2 kilometers a second to get into orbit. Disconnect those. Don't hit anything. Thank you. Let's throttle back up here. We lost a little bit of velocity. We're losing a lot of velocity, actually. Alright, cool. Now we're back to where we need to be. And we're way above the point where I need to start turning. So we're going to put it down to about 30 degrees here on the nav ball. Like I said, this is the hardest part of this game. In my opinion, I think it's the hardest part of this game, is getting anything into orbit from Kerbin, just because of the atmosphere and the gravitational pull. So, yeah, that's pretty much why I like building space stations with lots of docking ports, and why I like building more than one space station. Because it's just so much easier if you have a tanker of fuel sitting in orbit instead of we're going to turn these tanks off. If I start, I'm turning these tanks off mainly because once I disconnect this main rocket, it'll try to drain, or this rocket that's going to burn after this main, or this skipper rocket right here, is going to start trying to burn fuel from the space station, and I don't want it to do that. I want to keep as much fuel in the space station as I possibly can. Let's see where we're at here. 64. We're going to try to get that up to about 80 roughly before we start turning over anymore, and then we're gonna start gaining horizontal velocity. I'm actually gonna turn over just a touch, another 15 degrees on the nav ball here, just to see if that'll help us out a little bit. But yeah, we're gonna attempt to get this thing in orbit. I did do kind of a dry run just to make sure that this thing would get close to being in orbit. I actually haven't gotten into into a complete orbit yet, so I don't know if it will, because we are running low on fuel as we speak, and that's not a terribly good thing, and we're not anywhere near the velocity we need to be to get into orbit. So I might have screwed this whole thing up. Sorry. Yeah, so we're gonna see if we can actually get this thing into orbit. So we have this space station. Hold on, let me disconnect that. There we go. We have this space station that we need to get into orbit around Kerbin, and then we're gonna build well, it's probably gonna be almost exactly the same. We're gonna build another space station that we're gonna put into orbit around the moon. I want to make it the exact same. I want to just load up the saved file of this and just get it to the moon. But I don't know if it'll be the best thing because we have to plan for Kethane, and I don't know if I want to use or if I want to have a Kethane converter in orbit around the moon, or if I want to have all that stuff on the surface. Now, if we mine Kethane from the surface of the moon, we could either fly the what's the word I'm looking for? Crude, I guess you can call it, the crude Kethane, or the basic gassed Kethane gas. We can fly that up to the space station and convert it at the space station, or we can build a converter that lands on the surface of the moon and convert it on the surface, and then fly finished fuel up to the space station. But I haven't really decided what I want to do with that yet. If you leave comments, so I don't know what you guys think. Maybe we should build a converter for Kethane in orbit, or we should build a converter on the surface of the moon. But we're still going to end up building tankers to hold fuel on the surface of the moon. I just don't know if I want it to be raw Kethane or if I want it to be finished fuel. Because it's gonna be a pain, I have a feeling, to transfer. Because these are the only two mods I'm using, is like a rover and the Kethane mod itself. I'm not using any of the mods. I saw another Kethane Let's Play with it had like these invisible fuel lines that you could connect rocket to rocket, and I just like that doesn't. I don't want to use that because I think that's just kind of an easy way out. To me, anyways, I think it is, and we might not be getting into orbit here. This thing a little bit more up, and we are gaining. We're not far off from being in velocity to be in orbit, so I'm not too worried, but I am kind of worried. I'm not gonna lie. As long as our app, if our Apple apps catches back up to us, which it is doing right now, we'll be fine. We're not burning any fuel out of this thing, are we? No. Cool. Because I want to keep as much fuel in that space station as I can. So we're going to tip over again a little bit more. And what was I talking about? Oh, that invisible fuel line thing. Like it'll help retarded amounts. It'll help so much to have that, so we don't have to land refuelers on the tanks itself to refuel and then fly it and then do all that stuff. But I think that's kind of like, I don't know. I just think it's like an easy way out. Like I want to make it so it's difficult to mine Kethane on the moon, because it's gonna. I mean, if you were mining any kind of resources on the moon, it would be extremely difficult to do so. So I think if we do it more vanilla than instead of adding more mods, I think it'll be a lot more entertaining / watching me fail miserably. But I don't know. I just think that's kind of a little bit too much of an easy way out with that mod. But I mean, I don't know. I might end up having to use it, or I might end up having to add another mod just to make it a little bit easier on myself. But I'm gonna leave that discretion up to you guys. So leave in the comments if we want to make a converter on the surface of the moon, or we want to make a converter in orbit. I think it'll be a little more viable if we make a converter in orbit. But the only problem with that is that we're not going to be able to convert as much Kethane and we're going to end up filling up Kethane tanks on the surface, and then we're going to cut it. Let's see, where do I want to put this? How far I want to put this out here? I'm gonna do 150. We're gonna do 150 kilometers away from the surface, just because that'll give me good enough room to adjust if I need to. Whenever I go to rendezvous any kind of space state or spacecraft with the space station. But leave in the comments, like I was saying, I'm gonna go back to what I was saying. Leave in the comments if we should convert on the surface or convert in orbit around the moon. But the only problem I see running in with that is that we're going to end up mining a lot of Kethane and on the surface, and we'll be filling up tanks with raw Kethane. So then we'll have to fly it up to the space station. So we have to make sure that our space station can hold enough fuel to convert it, or have enough space to convert fuel. So we don't have to run into that problem, or we can convert it on the surface and then fly finished fuel up to the space station if we need, or when and if we need to do any kind of interstellar travel. So I don't know. You guys pick. I'm leaning towards converting it on the surface, though it is going to be a little more difficult on me in general, because I'll have to like transfer Kethane from the miner to the converter, or vice versa. But if we mine it, we can use another tanker to fly and catch raw Kethane and fly it up to the space station and convert it at the space station. But we're also going to have two separate tanks on the space station, for one for Kethane and one for actually refined fuel. So I can't really decide on which way I want to go with that. So if you guys vote or comment on the on this video and let me know what you guys think, I'll be able to make a better educated guess on what I should do in that situation, or in that instance anyways. We're gonna tip this guy over and actually use our SAS since we are now in orbit. I told you guys we'd get into orbit. Well, actually, I didn't tell you guys that, but I had a general. I thought we would. I didn't think we'd have too much trouble getting into orbit. So we're gonna put this guy at 150 kilometer orbit. Why am I spinning all awkwardly? Is my engine off? Yes. Let's see here. We'll wait until we get to our node, or our Apple apps anyways. Get roughly on top of it, or close to it anyways, so we don't adjust it as much. And I just overshot it, crap. That's alright. As long as it doesn't adjust, we'll be fine. But yeah, like I said in the previous video, if you guys don't want to watch this modded version, which I think is probably a little more entertaining than the vanilla version, but if you don't want to watch a modded version, I do have vanilla Let's Play, so go and check that out. I have a playlist for it, and I'm going to be adding videos to that as well. I've been trying to do this Kethane Mod series for a while now, so I wanted to see if I can make it entertaining, I guess would be the word. Excuse me. But yeah, so we're going to get this into orbit, and then we are going to decouple our little tug right here, this guy right here, and we're going to use it. Well, actually, let's deploy our action groups, guys. Turn on all the lights and extend the solar panels. It's awesome. Use action groups. So where are we at here? Now, do I need to adjust? No, I don't need to adjust that. So we need to do another orbit to get the periaps close to where we want it. So we're going to do a quick fast forward around the surface here. And also, I need to remind myself to put a flag at our space station, so whenever we do deorbit things, we can put it back towards our space station, so it's easier for our Kerbals to recover. I mean, granted, you can recover anything as long as it's on the surface and not destroyed, but I like being able to aim for specific areas. (150 and 150), perfect. We are in a very, very nice circular orbit. So we are going to point this guy at the poles. We're going to actually point it north. So So we're going to point our space station towards the north, so it stays in position for the most part while it orbits the surface of Kerbin. I always want to say Earth, but I keep trying to correct myself in my head before I even say anything. So we're going to actually spin this guy just a touch so our solar panels get as much of that delicious sun energy while it's still around. We're gonna take a quick little screenshot here. Why am I spinning back the way I was? I don't want to do that. I want to stay just like that. Now stay there. Don't move, you bastard. All right. Yeah, so we're gonna actually now, as long as this thing still has as much fuel as it can carry, which it does, and our Jorbles is like jamming out in his cockpit right now, which is still the greatest name I've ever seen, ever. I want to meet somebody with that name. Actually, I think that would be that would be hilarious to meet somebody. That would be my best friend forever if their name was Jorbles. Because it would just be too much fun to say. Like you could be able, like instead of texting them, screw that. You'd be calling me like, "What's up, Jorbles?" You could just say Jorbles all the time, and it would be very entertaining inside your brain. Don't judge me. Don't judge me, guys. anyways, we're gonna disconnect. I cracked myself up. We're gonna disconnect this guy. So we're gonna actually control from here. Actually, you know what? Hold on. Let's see. We'll control from here, and then we'll rename the vessel. Space Station Docking. So let's rename it Jorbal's Domain SS. Jorbal's Domain Space Station. We'll name it. We'll put it as a station. Okay. Jorbal's is going to be the commander of our space station because that is the greatest. And then we're going to click control from here. So whenever we do decouple, we'll have control of our tug. And we are going to go ahead and decouple this guy and see if we can't not crash into our space station. All right. So we're going to let it. I don't have any RCS fuel or RCS thrusters on this little tug thing. So we're going to wait until it slowly gets away from the space station so we don't run into it. And then we're going to point retrograde, which would be this direction. Roughly. Don't hit that. Awesome. It's kind of a cool shot too. Let's do that. Boop. All right. We're gonna point retro. Ooh, don't hit the space station. Okay. We're gonna point retrograde, and we're just gonna burn just a touch, just to get away from our space station. There we go. Just so we don't have to worry too much about it running into each other or anything. There she goes. There goes our space station. So we're gonna deorbit this tug now. And I don't know where the space center is. So we're going to just deorbit it and get it out of the orbit of Kerbin. Because we don't want to leave any space junk. Because space junk is bad. It's pollution, okay, guys? We don't want to leave junk floating around the surface of Kerbin and then attracting ants and raccoons. And I don't know if you guys ever seen Metalocalypse, but that's one of my favorite episodes. Go check it out. If anybody understands that reference. But anyways, we're going to deorbit this guy as soon as I stop talking and actually do it, because I'm just like losing myself in my conversation now. So we're going to go ahead and just deorbit this guy. I'm not aiming for anything specific. We're just going to bring our periaps down to about 20, roughly 20, around there. And then once we start re-entering, we'll be aero braking with this thing, so it should slow down and shrink our apoaps, which should then turn into our periapsis, which is our lowest point, and then we should be deorbiting, hopefully on a bright or lightened side of the planet. Because I don't know about you guys, but there are no really lights on this thing, so it's not like you can see it very well. I mean, I can't very well see it that well anyways, so I'm sure you guys can't see it very well. So we're gonna deorbit this guy. I know I've said that a million times, but I like to repeat myself. Don't judge me. So we should be starting to aero brake as soon as we hit about roughly 60,000 meters or 60 kilometers. As soon as we hit that, we should be deorbiting or aero braking very nicely and slowing ourselves down so we can descend here. We're going to let our camera slow us down. There we go. And we're going to point this guy at retrograde even more. And we're actually going to take a look at the map and see how much the aero braking is actually working for us. And I should put RCS on these things, but I don't really think I need it personally. I mean, there's the reaction wheel within the brain on this thing, so it kind of works, but it's very difficult to control. So hopefully our aero braking is working. It's very slowly working, but it's working nonetheless. So let's actually click on these guys. So it might actually bring our periaps down completely, or our periaps should turn into our apoaps because then that'll be our highest point. It should pretty much bring it down. Is that where? That is where the space center is. I'm almost positive this right here is where the space center is, but I could be wrong. But it does look like that's where it is, and we're gonna miss it by quite a bit. But we might actually be able to land on this part right here. I don't know. Let's see if we can see any atmospheric drag yet. But we can make sure that it lands on land, but I don't know if I want to do that. This is actually a pretty cool shot too. Let's see. Boop. I like taking screenshots. Holy crap, we should probably start slowing down here. About 20,000 feet up. We can deploy our parachutes now, but just because I don't want them to be catching on fire, we're going to just use the rest of our fuel to slow us down, and then we'll deploy our parachutes. So we're just going to burn up the rest of this fuel so we don't leave any waste within the tanks. Deploy our parachutes and let this guy set nicely in the ocean right off the coast of the continent next to the Space Center, which is pretty good if you ask me. Alright, so that's pretty much it for this episode, guys. So next episode we're going to be doing pretty much the exact same thing. Well, not really, but kind of. But we're going to be getting a space station. I'm going to probably redesign the space station because I need to wait and see if you guys are going to... I need to wait and see if you guys want to convert stuff in orbit or if you guys want to convert stuff on the surface. Because I have to design the space station accordingly. So don't forget to leave those comments on whether we should convert Kethane in orbit or if we should convert Kethane on the surface. So leave those comments. Don't forget to like the video. Don't forget to subscribe because there are 2 of these Kerbal Space Program series going on now, and if you guys are missing them, they're actually pretty sweet. I think, anyways. I might be just tooting my own horn, but hey, I like playing this game, and I think I'm doing an alright job. So don't forget to like, don't forget to subscribe, link this videos, link the Kethane mod. I'm gonna leave a Kethane link so you guys can go check out the mod yourselves in the comment or in the description. There'll be a link for the mod of Kethane, and there'll be a link to Kerbal Space Program itself in case you guys don't have this game. I do recommend going to pick it up. It's on Steam right now for like I think $23 or $25. And you gotta also remember that this game's still in alpha, I believe. It's either in alpha or beta. I haven't decided, or I don't remember. I'm pretty sure it's in alpha because they have another update coming out with science stuff, like new science modules that you guys can add to your spacecraft. And believe me, this game is super fun to play. It's very, very addicting. So don't forget to go check it out on KerbalSpaceProgram.com. And don't forget, I mean, you can pick it up on Steam or you can pick it up from KerbalSpaceProgram.com itself. So I do suggest go and pick it up because it is a very, very fun and entertaining game. So thanks guys for watching, and I will see you next time.